The Frost Lord, that's how I call this endgame Shadow of War build, excelling in frost damage to get Wrath as soon as possible and unleash the super powerful Ring Wrath attack. I will tell you all the best armor and weapons I use in this build, the skills you need and way more. So if you like that, then like would be super appreciated and let's go. As the name Frost Lord suggests, this build is primarily based on the Bright Lord's armor set. I already did a video on how to get this awesome armor, but now I want to show you how to use it in the most efficient way with the use of Frost. The Bright Lord's armor is all about getting Wrath as soon as possible, and you want that especially in the end game when you unlock the Ring Wrath ability. They will let you summon Gongorian soldiers and have you deal a ton of damage as well, while the enemies are easy to hit. It also lets you res the fallen enemies you killed, creating an army in the process. So yeah, being able to use this ability as much as possible is insanely powerful, and that is what this build is centered around at. Looking at the gear pieces, in this build I use all the Bright Lord weapons and armor except for the ranged weapon. So now I got the full set bonus because of that, and that is of course needed to make this set super powerful. Getting my rev ability 50% faster and also replenishing all my elf shot when killing an enemy during Elven Rage, or in this case Ring Wrath. And those elf shot will be extremely handy, as you will see in a second. Of course I use my Bright Lord sword for the Wrath after performing an Ice Storm finisher. Freezing my enemies and doing an Ice Storm finisher is a huge part of my build. As for the upgrade I use for the skill, I think it's totally up to you. I think Shower of Ice is nice to get more people frozen at once, but again, it's what you prefer. But overall the Ice Storm ability is super handy, of course, against the many captains to get a lot of Wrath back, and in a lot of situations you will be able to pull it off, these Ice Storm finishers, for example during a fort assault with a ton of people running around, and it of course also helps that you get an army of revenants after your Ring Wrath ability, so those guys will also keep your enemies busy while you will be busy with your Ice Storm ability. A successful Ice Storm finisher generates a lot of Wrath, like I already said, and also might, and it will also knock your enemies to the ground, so you can perform a ground attack as well, so it's just a great combo. I used my dagger to build up some Wrath before the fight started with a stealth kill on frozen enemies. Since your dagger throw will have a freeze every couple of seconds, you can freeze your target first and then follow up with a stealth attack, although this can be tricky to pull off. Still though, the frost throw is always handy in every fight to make the enemies frozen, because sometimes if you do the Ice Storm ability too much, you can't do it anymore, but then still, with this quick throw ability, you can make the enemies frozen. So that's why this is a nice weapon in this build. My chest is really great for getting that extra rev when getting hit, also nice to have less damage from ranged attacks. Really a nice chest to use in this build, and that's also why I use green gems to make sure that I get more health to absorb more damage and generate more Wrath. As for other gems, I use the Warrior gem on my ranged weapon because you want to do a lot of damage with that, but other than that, it really depends on your playstyle. I think a life gem on my sword is just great to stay alive, but you can also go for a Warrior gem there. Same goes for the stealth weapon. Let's move over to the cloak and the ring, that both are nice for getting that extra Wrath, and those are of course both from the Bright Lord set. You get Wrath from killing frozen enemies, and you want to do that with your ranged weapon, for example, that I have here. And I kind of toyed around with a ton of ranged weapons, but now I ended at the Threshing Hammer, and that's the legendary ranged weapon from the Machine Tribe that has a 100% chance to create an explosion when doing headshots. So that's really nice. Freeze breath from Elven Light them all, then throw a headshot and bomb. You get a lot of freezing kills. Before this I used the orange hammer called the Frostbiter that deals 51% increased range damage to frozen enemies. So do an Elven Light again with your Frost Breath to kill the freezing enemies, throw your hammer to kill them all, and you get some nice Wrath. But of course with the Threshing Hammer you have to use less elf shot to kill more people because of the explosion, so that's why I prefer the Threshing Hammer right now. You can also do the Bright Lord's Bow, of course, because it lets you freeze enemies around your target, but then you need a headshot to kill the enemies, and with the Frostbiter it's easier. You just have to throw the hammer to kill the target. Of course, you need a headshot with a machine hammer as well, but that is also needed to cause the explosion, so that makes sense. Also nice from the thrashing hammer is that you have a chance to get your elf shot back, although you will of course have a lot of it because of the set bonus from the Bright Lord armor to get some elf shot back during the ring wrath ability. And since you build up that ability all the time, you almost always have arrows to use, and that can be handy for the skill Shadow Domination that works like Shadow Strike, only does it dominate the target instead of killing it. And if you combine that with the upgrade Bright Lord's Wrath for the Drain ability, then you can get some wrath from dominating your target too. So obviously I use the Elven Light with Frost Breath upgrade skill as well to free some targets very easily. During Ring Wrath you get a ton of might to do these attacks, so while you can do some executes during the Ring Wrath to take the enemies out faster. And what's funny about that is that of course on the sword, on the Bright Lord's sword, you have the perk to get some health back when doing executions, so that's one thing to keep in mind. During the Ring Wrath ability you build up might really fast, you build up 2 full bars, and you can also save 1 bar to have a Frost Breath ready for when you're out of Ring Wrath to quickly build up that wrath again. And then of course I'm talking about 2 might attacks from 1 full might bar, and then you need the Ceaseless Might upgrade I told you about in my best skills video to be able to do 2 might attacks when your bar is full, but that one is of course always necessary as I told you in that video. Another skill that is extremely important in this build is the Hammer of Erigen upgrade for the Shadow Strider skill, since you will get frozen enemies really soon simply by jumping over them. Another nice way to kill them and get some wrath. So yeah, there you have it, the Frost Lord build I use to get wrath as soon as possible, kill my enemies in the Ring Wrath, and then try to build up the wrath again using a ton of freezing abilities, while you also have a ton of allies on the battlefield at all times. Let me know what you think of this build, if you see any room for improvements, or if you got a build yourself. I would love to highlight more, so let me know in the comments down below. Of course, subscribe to stay up to date on way more Shadow of War videos, like the one where I showed you all the best skills in the game and where I showed you some pro tips on how to upgrade legendary gear and way more, so totally check that out if you have not already. Like this video to support the channel, thanks a lot for watching and goodbye.